Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about coordination and collaboration workflows. We've got some great presentations today, but before we get started, there's a few areas of housekeeping I want to cover before we get on to the presentations. If you're having problems with the video feed today, or you've got colleagues that couldn't make it, then don't worry, this session is being recorded and we'll share that after the event. That email will also include a variety of really useful resources to help you get started with the technology that we're going to discuss today. If you have any questions, please use Slido. The joining instructions are on screen at the moment. We typically have a big response, so please check that your question hasn't already been covered elsewhere and upvote those you're interested in. Upvoting is really important because we typically get a really big response and it ensures that we can prioritize the right questions. We'll also be sharing some polls, so please do respond where possible as it helps us review and refine our approach for future webinars. I'm Dave Tong, I'm your host for today. I'm a senior consultant in the pre-sales team, which means my role is to support and inspire our customers, helping them get the most out of our technology. I'm joined by two colleagues who will be covering the technical demos. So Phoebe, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thanks Dave. Hi everyone, my name is Phoebe Baxter. I am a Customer Success Manager here at Esri UK, and that essentially means that my role is to ensure that our customers receive the tools and support they need in order to achieve their goals. So I'll let Emma introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Phoebe. Hi everyone. Emma Perry. I work in the pre-sales team as well with Dave, but I'm working closely with our utilities and telecoms customers.
Great, thanks both. So Phoebe's going to start our presentation today by talking through a variety of tips and tricks in Pro. She'll jump between tools quite a lot, but we want to cover a variety of important areas that are often overlooked. Emma will then provide a more focused showcase of Workflow Manager. This is a great tool for coordinating work tasks across a variety of users within your organization. We'll then do the Q&A at the end, so please do put those questions through on Slido. It's a great session. I hope you enjoy it. So that's it for me for now. Over to you, Phoebe.
Great, thanks Dave. I'm just going to share my screen and we will get started. Perfect. So, great. As Dave mentioned, I'm going to be taking you through some tips and tricks as to how you can coordinate and collaborate across ArcGIS. So there are lots of built-in capabilities across the different products in the ArcGIS platform to help you collaborate and coordinate. Now these are things that are often overlooked, but they are really vital for coordination and collaboration. I will be jumping around a bit here as we move throughout the different products, but I will let you know as soon as I'm finished and moving on to the next thing. So, even though it might seem simple, there is a huge benefit when it comes to managing your content. And this is exactly where I want to start today. I'm going to show you how good metadata can improve collaboration and then how you can share your data with others via groups. So first of all, I'm just going to open up ArcGIS Online, and here I have a hosted feature layer which shows population change in England and Wales between 2011 and 2021. Now I have started to fill out the metadata of this layer. I have a brief description of my layer, I have some categories, and I also have some tags. Now this information is really important as it can help users within your organization find your data easier so that they can then use it within their own maps and analytics. If this dataset was particularly sensitive, I would always recommend adding in the terms of use so that you can ensure your data is used in the right way. So if it had sensitive information, you can make sure that it's not shared publicly, for example. So once our metadata is ready to go, I'm now in a position where I can actually share my content. So I have 3 different sharing levels within ArcGIS. This dataset is currently shared at the organisation level, which means that anyone who is a member of my organisation has access to this, And depending on the settings that I've set up, this can either be as like a read-only layer, or it could be editable so they can use it within their own analytics. I do also have the option to share this dataset publicly or to just the owner, so only I can see and use this layer. However, what if I wanted to share this dataset with only a certain group of people within my organization, such as a project team? And this is where groups come in and the idea of group sharing. Now, first of all, I will need to set up a group. So I have a create a group wizard open here, and you can see here that I have some settings I can control. And this comes back to the importance of metadata. It's really important to fill out as much information as you can. So I'm going to just fill in the name. I can add in a summary and some tags if I wanted to. I also have the ability to control some of the settings, such as who can join this group, how they can join the group, and who can contribute content. I also have the ability to create a shared update group. Now, a shared update group means that any group member can edit content that's shared in the group. These shared update groups are really useful in collaborative situations where multiple people will need to update and edit the same item. Now, once my group is set up, I can then share my content to this group for only those group members to see and utilize. So from this, you can see how groups make collaboration much more efficient, as you only need to share data and maps with the relevant people rather than to a whole organization. But what if I wanted to collaborate with those outside of my organization, so someone who's not a member of my ArcGIS online organization? And this is where partnered collaborations really come into play. And partnered collaborations work off the premise of groups. In a partnered collaboration group, I can invite another ArcGIS Online member from a different organization to my own group so that they can collaboratively edit items, build web maps, and publish apps together, essentially in the same way that you would gather and create material within your own organizational group. This is slightly different to a distributed collaboration. In a distributed collaboration, organizations can share data and content between ArcGIS Enterprise deployments, and this was introduced at Enterprise 10.5.1. Now, there are different ways to set up a distributed collaboration, so you can implement the way that best suits your needs. Some examples include sharing from Enterprise to ArcGIS Online, Online to Enterprise, or from multiple enterprise deployments to a central one. Now, these sharing methods that I've just demonstrated, so that's the standard sharing options in ArcGIS Online, groups, and partnered collaborations, are fundamental when it comes to collaboration. They allow us to share our data internally and externally and have control over the editing and viewing permissions of this collaboration. Now, another great collaboration tool in ArcGIS Online that again I think is definitely underutilized is hosted feature layer views. So a hosted feature layer view is a great way to share information with stakeholders and control the information provided to them. You can provide an alternative visual representation of a layer, such as applying a filter, or you can provide an alternative data representation, such as excluding fields that contain personal information. This means that you, as the owner, have control of the conditions that you share with different users. So let's have a go at creating one together. So I'm going to go back to my hosted feature layer, and from this item overview page, I can create a view layer directly from here. Now, I know that my stakeholder for this particular view layer is only interested in the total population for the UK, for England and Wales. This means that I can remove these sub-layers, such as over 65 and under 15, from my layer, so I'm only providing them with the information that they require. I also know that they only want information for the southeast of England, so I can put a filter onto this view layer to select only the southeast of England. So if I select my region name, being the southeast, we can see on the map on the right hand side that my view layer has updated to reflect my change. Some other controls that I could change would be doing a specific area of interest or removing some of the 584 fields that are in this layer. Once I'm happy with the visual and data representation of my view layer, I have the ability to again control some of the settings of my metadata. I'm going to save it in the correct folder, add my categories, add my tags, add a summary, and then I can press create. Now it will take a few minutes just to whiz around, so I have got one open. So here I've got my population change in England and Wales view. I can see that it's for the southeast of England and that it's only for the total population change. Now, what's really nice about view layers is that you can also control whether the view is view only, so they can't interact with it, edit the data, or whether the view is editable, so you can give people different privileges. From this, you can see that view layers are a really great tool for collaboration, as you only need to share the relevant data with your stakeholder. Now, what's also really nice about view layers that I wanted to highlight is that any edits made to the data in the source layer, so in that population change layer, this will appear in the view. However, as the view is now a separate item in our ArcGIS Online, any changes made to the view will not appear in that source layer. This means that you are able to provide multiple different users different views of the same dataset, depending on all their differing requirements. We're making hosted view layers a really great tool for collaboration. Now I've mentioned a few options for collaboration, but I now wanted to show you some tools for coordinating your workflows. The first of this being Power Automate. Now, Power Automate offers a low to no code environment for integrating automation into ArcGIS processes. This is a great way to coordinate your workflow, as you can customize actions to automate tasks that are used frequently. Now, there are lots of things that you can do with Power Automate, but some of the ones that I wanted to highlight are geocoding addresses in a list or a database, updating feature layers in your ArcGIS Online, or retrieving and uploading attachments to other external systems, such as a Microsoft system. Now, all of this automation will be based on a trigger or a schedule. So an example of this might be to notify a survey manager via email that a new record has been collected in Survey 123, and then generate a report of this entry. So what would this look like? First of all, we would need to define the trigger for our workflow, and we know that this is a new entry in Survey 123. We would then need to retrieve the attributes from our feature class, so retrieve all of the information that has been entered into Survey 123. And then finally, generate a template email and a template report, which we can then populate with the information collected from our Survey 123. And you can see an example email template on the right-hand image there on the screen. So this is just one example of how Power Automate can be used to automate your workflows and make repetitive and frequent tasks more efficient. This is all made possible using the ArcGIS Connector for Power Automate, and if this is something that you're interested in finding out more about, there are lots of useful blogs on this topic, and I will share these with you after the webinar. There are lots of other tips and tricks for coordinating and collaborating in ArcGIS, but the final one that I wanted to show you was using tasks in ArcGIS Pro. Now, tasks are a series of steps that guide users through a sequential workflow in ArcGIS Pro. Now, I often use tasks for processes that have a lot of complex steps, or it might be a process that I don't do too regularly, and so I've just forgotten how to do it. What's really great about tasks is not only are they highly configurable for different workflows, you can also share your tasks with others in your organization. So you can then share your workflows and your tips and tricks with them. One process that I often forget how to do is georeference an image. So a colleague has shared their task with me, and I'm going to show you how I can do this now. So I've uploaded their task they've sent me to ArcGIS Pro, and I can see that the task here is to georeference a new development plan. Now, there are different ways to set up a task. They can either act as a set of instructions for the user to manually work through and follow, or they can be steps that run automatically with very little user input. Now I know that this task is the latter, so as soon as I press go, things are going to start happening straight away. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that before we got into it. So I'm going to press this arrow to get started. It's going to ask me to add my image that I want to georeference, so I'm going to upload this. And now it's going to automatically start running through some things. It's going to open up the georeferencing pane, it's going to turn auto apply off, it's going to fit the image to the display, all for me without me actually doing anything. The only thing that I'm now prompted to do is add some control points, and the task has even selected the correct tool for me to use straight away. From my knowledge, I know that the end of this section here relates to the cross section here, and this triangle relates to the end of court close. Once I'm happy with my control points, all I need to do is press next step, and the task will automatically apply the transformation and save it for me. I was able to improve the efficiency of a workflow that I usually struggle with by using a set of predefined tasks, and I think this is a really cool way of improving the efficiency of your workflows. Now, the final thing that I wanted to show you is that I think loads of my colleagues will benefit from this task. So if I just exit out of the task and go to the Share tab, I do have the option to save this task item. I can either upload it as a task to my ArcGIS Online account and share it with my ArcGIS Online organisation for everyone's access, or I can even save the task item to my file, and I can then just email my colleagues a copy of this task item. So hopefully this shows you how tasks can not only help you coordinate your own workflows, but help improve the efficiency of your colleagues. And it's a really powerful tool that's ready to tackle complex workflows. So just to summarise, those were some tips and tricks for collaborating and coordinating that are already built into the ArcGIS platform. We looked at group sharing, hosted view layers, Power Automate, and tasks in Pro. But what if you wanted to coordinate a workflow across multiple different applications and people? And this is where ArcGIS Workflow Manager can help you. So I'm now going to pass to Emma, who will be able to run through this.
Thanks, Phoebe. Yeah, so Workflow Manager, it's, as Phoebe said there, a dedicated coordination app, and it's available for both ArcGIS Online and Enterprise. So it's a scalable work management system, and it's designed to guide users through streamlined workflows, but while also encouraging adherence to standards and best practices. And we sometimes refer to it as the conductor in your ArcGIS environment because it's orchestrating both your GIS and non-GIS workflows. So if we take a look at a sort of simple, repeatable process, it might follow this kind of pattern. Work is submitted, it gets reviewed, it gets handed out to one or more people to complete the work. And then, of course, you have the deliverables that get created and sent out. So having this established process makes it quite easy for an organisation to complete something like this, maybe once or a handful of times, maybe once a day or week. But what happens when you try to scale that up? Maybe you need to do it hundreds of times. And then what happens when you get those short-term surges of activity that might overwhelm your resources? You'll start to see bottlenecks magnified, processes slow down, you get more mistakes and overall quality drops. And there are other challenges. You've got multiple people working on the same kind of job. That leads to a bit of lack of consistency in deliverables, duplication of effort, and lack of auditability. And that's quite a lot of negativity. So this is where we kind of say, enter Workflow Manager. And of course, how much of those issues we kind of described there it addresses will depend on what you choose to do with it. But at a very high level, some of the benefits include improved data quality. So having that centralized system to manage spatial information, along with the ability to build in those critical quality control steps in every process, this means we can help, Workflow Manager can help you to maintain your data quality and integrity. And so when an organization designs and uses a process that everyone follows, it's predictable, it can be monitored, it's easier to act on problems when they arise. And so knowing that everyone's working through different job types in the same way, that increases trust and reduces risks. And we not only want to make managing work easier, but we also want to provide a smooth experience for the user. We don't want this to be something else they're tackling on a day-to-day basis. So by automating those tedious, manual and repetitive steps they have to do, users can focus on the tasks that truly need their attention. And that kind of automation results in increased productivity. By capturing business processes, and perhaps more importantly, capturing the thought processes that go into them, it's easier to onboard staff and get them working faster, and not quite so devastating to lose the ones that had all the knowledge. So it's improving knowledge transfer. And then, of course, what makes Workflow Manager different? There are a lot of different types of workflow management systems out there. We care about the geographic approach. We care about the location. We want to use that location data effectively in analysis and reporting. And we want to not have to duplicate it in multiple systems. The key here is Workflow Manager is integrated into the ArcGIS system. Workflow Manager is a horizontal product with a wide range of use cases that span multiple industries. And I've listed a few here of the more kind of common scenarios that we see our customers using Workflow Manager with today. And these can all have varying levels of complexity based on the specific requirements. So while all opportunities are not the same, there's usually a similar underlying type of process. So if we take that first one there, the data submission and review use case, and that's what we're going to focus on for the rest of the session. A simple version of that workflow could be a map change request. The user will send in information, maybe an asset needs to be added or removed, and that needs to be updated in the GIS. This gets submitted, a job is created with an admin review, and then assigned to an editor to complete the tasks. Linear, straightforward. A more complex version of this would be a scenario where an organization receives data updates from a number of different, say, cities or counties for multiple data layers with both internal and external review processes that then need to be reconciled with an authoritative database. Now that one's got lots of more moving pieces and participants, but both of those workflows are very achievable in Workflow Manager. So I know what you're thinking, that sounds really great, Emma, but what actually is it? Well, I'm going to open it up in a second, but at a very high level, we have three components. Firstly, you design your workflows, so you customize job templates for your organization. You set up the automation and access to the tools and the data that you need in there. And then you can manage those ongoing tasks, filter them, add comments to them, all sorts of things. And of course, the final part is like the actual doing part. So that's where you can find and complete any jobs that are assigned to you. And that's where we'll start. The job I'm going to show is, firstly, as a manager, I've received a plan for a new housing development. I need to georeference that plan and then get one of my engineers to use it to design some new water service connections for these properties. Once my engineer has done this, I want it to come back to me and my team for approval. So let's open up Workflow Manager. I'm already in a workflow project here, and you can see the tabs at the top reflect those three components I just mentioned, and we'll come back to design and manage in a moment. I've got a few jobs on the go here, but for this example, I'm going to create a fresh job. The job is given a name and immediately opens the first step. So as well as filling in some details, I'll just change the name so we can easily track it through this session. I'll give a description of the task that needs doing. You can see the start date is today, and I could change the priority if I wanted to. I'll click Proceed to move to the next step, which is a question. Do I have a plan to georeference? In this case, I do, so I'll click Yes. If I'd said no, the step we'll see next is simply skipped. So in this step, Workflow Manager has opened the map viewer, and I'm still actually in the Workflow Manager interface, so I can see all of the current details about the job on the right-hand side. From here, I can also go ahead and complete the step, but first I will actually do what it's asking me to do. I will bring in a media layer, so a JPEG, into my map viewer, and I'll georeference it in here using the georeference tools. So I could use some control points side by side, but for this one, I'll just very quickly reshape and rotate this image so it sits where I need it to. I increase the transparency slightly, save the map, and now I will finish this step in the job. So I'll next have the option to, Workflow Manager needs a location first. So using the same web map with the georeferenced image in it, we can really easily define that for this step. But I'll now have the option to add an attachment. And this could be another relevant document or instructions, or it could just be the same image that I georeferenced. But for now, it's not a required question, so I will move on. And the last thing before assigning this job to someone else is to confirm whether I have any additional comments. So this is an example of another loop where if I said yes, I'd be given a box to type them in, but I'll say no for now. That part's skipped. And I can now hand the rest of the task over to someone else. So I will assign it to this user here. And what we see when we click finish on that is that I now have no more steps left on this job for me. So if I switch browser quickly, so in this browser now, I'm logged in as that user that we assigned that to. So if I refresh my new list, I can see I have this job. I have a task from the webinar job. And the first step on this one is actually an email placeholder. So this is just to show that it could be when this is assigned that an email gets sent to me, to my line manager, to a group to let them know this job has started. So the job is in progress. And in this case, we are again opening a map viewer. But here I want to make really clear that it could have opened Field Maps, Suite, any other platform you want to use. We're just opening a web page. So I'm in the same map viewer again. I'm going to use this to design the service connections as per the instructions. So I'll do this really roughly for now. I'll just draw in a main here. I can see I've got some trees on the plan, so I'll try to avoid those. I'll just do a few for now, just so you get the idea. And again, save the map, finish this step in the task. I can leave some notes to say that I'm done and send it back to the approvers. Now in this step, I do have a list, but this could be automated or sent to a group. And so that step has gone. And so my final task as the approver, we go back to our other browser, I can see the job is back. What a very efficient engineer I've got there. And I can now review this design and sign it off. So again, we're opening the map viewer. I can see the changes that have been made. And I can now say, are the edits accepted? I'll say yes here, and we'll see what happens if I say no in a moment. But as before, I've got one more step to leave some comments as to if this job is complete. And again, it will now disappear from my list. So I said I'd go back to those design and manage tabs. So now I've completed that job. Let's do that. So firstly, that manage tab. So this is where the details of all the jobs can be viewed at an overview level. Across the top, we have some dashboard style charts. These can be used to filter the job list. In the map, you have the footprints of the jobs, and those are driven by that define location step that we saw in the last section. At the bottom in the table, we no longer have the webinar job to look at, but we could click on any of these other jobs and see the details. What step is it on? Who is it assigned to? The description of it. Lots of other information here, including a summary of the history of the job, so we can see who completed each step, how long they spent on it. And a more detailed history is generated and saved to a hosted feature layer. This is what we can see here. Let's move to design. This is what the back end of the task I just undertook looks like. So you can see lots of different flow items. You can see the 2 loops we put in where we were asked a question, as well as where it loops back to field assignment if we'd rejected the edits. But I want to create a new diagram to show you how easy this was to start putting together. So here I am in the builder. I have step library on the left. The settings will appear for each step on the right. And so the first step I had was a manual one for updating properties. So I can drag that step in from the library. I can update which fields I want shown. So I could add the job name, the start date. I think we had the priority rank in there as well. And as with things like Model Builder, we can join those steps up. So the next thing we had was a question. And I'll rename that so we know which one it is. And the question is what the user will see. Is there a plan to georeference? And this is where we have 2 paths depending on the answer. So in here we can see that yes is 1 and no is 0. And what we had were the two steps: if yes, open a web page; if no, skip to define location. So this is what we can add in now. So I'll start with the open web page and the define location. Join those up. And now we need to define in the properties of the path details what the logic is. So if yes, which was 1, open a web page; if no, which was 0, define the location. The define location settings allow me to point it at a web map. So I've got the ID of my web map in here. I'll leave the rest of the settings for now. For open web page, I'll drop the link to the map viewer, but you can see in here that it's just a URL, so it could open any web page. Going to skip a few steps here and go straight to assigning to a field worker using the advanced assignment step. So I will join these up. And in here, in the settings of advanced assignment, you can see here that this is where you define the options that I get. So I can assign this to show a group of people. And this box here is ticked. This says automatically switch assignment. And what that means is when we add the next task, so if we just add a manual one for now, I can leave the path assignment as maintain because the step will automatically switch to whoever is chosen. So I'm not going to carry on and do any more. We've explored some of the simple steps here. So that is the end of my demonstration. What we've seen is how to design a workflow, how to monitor the progress of jobs that are created, and how to undertake one of those jobs as two different users. And this is just one example of using Workflow Manager to better coordinate a repetitive workflow with some simple steps within the map viewer. There are many possibilities for connecting to different parts of the ArcGIS system in order to scale up those processes. So thank you. Back to you, Dave.
Okay, thanks, Emma. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Okay, well, thanks, Emma. Thanks very much, Phoebe, for your earlier presentation. Some great demos that I hope you found really useful. Phoebe started by discussing content management. It's important that your data, maps and apps are shared appropriately to ensure security, whilst also giving access to the teams that need it. Hosted feature layer views support that process to allow you to share a subset of any data set to ensure that they don't get full access. This is often used when sharing a stripped back view to the public. Power Automate is a great way to create workflows that extend outside ArcGIS. This might be to update data, trigger alerts, or send emails. Tasks in Pro allow you to streamline complex workflows, particularly when supporting new starters or those that don't use Pro every day. Finally, Emma showed how Workflow Manager provides a complete suite of tools for managing the coordination of more complex workflows outside your usual members of staff. This is particularly useful for processes that require quality audits or validation prior to approval. So hopefully you found that really useful. We'll now go over to some questions because we've had quite a lot come through, so we'll endeavour to cover as many of those as possible. So the one that's got the most upvotes is about, well, there's quite a lot of questions actually about sharing and collaboration with other organizations. So more specifically, is there a way to share outside my organization with partners without an Esri license? So at the moment, the default option there is to use the public sharing. That's the only way to get data to another organization if they don't currently have access to ArcGIS Online. Is Workflow Manager an added extra, or is it part of Pro and Enterprise license? So Workflow Manager is now included in our new user licenses. So that will be included for a lot of new users who didn't have it previously. There's a really interesting option about could Esri add an option to assign default groups to custom roles? That sounds like a brilliant idea. So that as you add new users, you define their role, that automatically assigns them to a group. Now, at the moment, that's not possible, but certainly a good thing to push through to the ideas team. So if you go to Esri Ideas, you can submit possible things for future enhancements. And a lot of our development does take direct inspiration from the questions from our community, so please do so. There's a question about licensing for Power Automate. So for Power Automate, obviously you'll need a Microsoft license, you'll need an ArcGIS license. So those two things are required to manage that process. And there was also a question related to Power Automate around geocoding. So by default, geocoding will use one of the world geocoders. So that does have a credit cost associated with it. However, if you want to do geocoding with using your own locators or using ones that don't have credits, then that's certainly possible outside the Power Automate environment. So you can either do that in ArcGIS Online or in Pro. Both of those provide cost-free geocoding if you've got access to either an API or a address data set that you can use. Now, in light of the fact that we talked about Power Automate, we've also had a question about data pipelines and where those fit in. So, to my mind, Power Automate is a really great way of integrating workflows that extend outside ArcGIS. So, for example, do you want to trigger an alert that sends an email through Outlook to your colleagues? Whereas data pipelines are much more about internal processes within the GIS. So that might be for processing data, for automation, for loading new data sets, for running analysis. So it's much more about the things you do internally. There's a few questions around tasks. So probably the best way of starting with tasks is, well, where do you go to learn about tasks? So if you go to the Esri Academy, so for me, if I ever want to learn anything about Esri, then either the Learn.ArcGIS or the Esri Academy are two great places to skill up on new technology or areas you're interested in. And so they both provide a variety of freely available courses to help you get up and running. So I've checked that, and there is a course specifically aimed at tasks. So that's in the Academy, well worth a look. Someone else was asking about tasks and how complex they are to set up. What's the comparison to Model Builder? So for me, I personally find Model Builder a little bit easier to use, particularly because you can use your geoprocessing history to create a model. So you run a variety of tasks, drag them into a model, and away you go. Tasks require a little bit more understanding, require a little bit more configuration, but certainly very approachable if you are someone who's familiar with using Pro. And I think Phoebe mentioned it. The value of tasks are they provide a workflow that allows the user to provide input at various different stages through that workflow. So georeferencing, as Phoebe showed greatly, is a brilliant example. Whereas a model is much more about creating your own tools. So there's a subtle difference between the two different approaches. Well worth looking at both if you've got the opportunity, because they provide a really nice mechanism for sharing your understanding and your expertise with a much wider community who perhaps might not be as useful with ArcGIS as you are.
Can I jump in there on the Workflow Manager questions, Dave? Just around the licensing, just to clear that up a little bit. I think there's still one.
Yeah, go for it,
Emma. So if you need to perform workflow steps in ArcGIS Pro, and we didn't talk about ArcGIS Pro, but there is, of course, a panel in Pro to access any steps you might be assigned to in there. You will need the Workflow Manager extension for ArcGIS Pro, which I think we mentioned is included in the Professional Plus user type. For ArcGIS Online, that is an organizational extension. And for Enterprise, that's a capability server. So hopefully that clears up those.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Emma. And I'm just skimming through. I think we've covered most things. No, I think we've gone through them all now. So hopefully that's provided a response to all the questions that came through. We do appreciate you spending so much time submitting these questions. We try and cover as many as we can. But I think for now, that's it for us. But before you go, I just want to promote next month's webinar where we'll be talking about how Python can enhance your use of ArcGIS. So if you enjoyed today, please do visit us next month where we'll be discussing Python. Thanks very much.